It is honestly fascinating how much time we spend dissecting the habits of every demographic under the sun except for one. We have endless documentaries on the boomers and their legendary housing wealth. We have a million articles roasting millennials for their lifestyle choices or debating the TikTok-fueled side hustles of Gen Z. But there is a massive group right in the center of the timeline that remains almost entirely invisible. They are operating in the background, handling their finances in a way that seems completely contradictory to an outsider, yet nobody is actually paying attention to the logic behind it. I am talking about the latchkey generation, those born from the mid-60s to the very start of the 80s. They are the people in your office who seem remarkably stable but live with a low-grade, constant hum of financial dread. You see them driving a car that has seen better decades while simultaneously dropping a fortune on a once-in-a-lifetime getaway. They have substantial bank balances, but shop like the Great Depression is right around the corner. If you want to understand the modern economy, you have to understand the specific psychological scar tissue this group carries. It all comes down to a fundamental shift in the American dream that happened right as they were coming of age. Imagine you are a kid in the late 70s or early 80s. You are watching your parents navigate a world where loyalty was a two-way street. Your father heads to the same manufacturing plant or corporate office every single morning, just like he has for 20 years. You see the physical reality of a pension. You see a mortgage that is a simple, predictable math problem. The bank is a brick-and-mortar temple of stability where the manager knows your family history. The deal was simple. Give the system your best years, and the system will ensure you never have to worry about your final ones. It was a linear, logical, and incredibly secure way to exist. You grew up believing that if you just stayed the course, the floor would always be solid beneath your feet. But then, everything changed. By the time you were hitting your professional stride in the late 90s and early 2000s, that floor started to creak. Then, in 2008, it completely gave way. You watched as the institutions that were supposed to be the bedrock of society, the big banks, the blue-chip employers, the housing market itself, turned into a giant sinkhole. You saw neighbors lose homes they had spent a decade paying for. You saw colleagues with master's degrees and 20-year resumes getting shown the door with nothing but a polite handshake and a cold shoulder. That moment was a collective psychological trauma. It taught an entire generation that the formula they were raised on was a total fabrication. That betrayal did not just change their bank accounts, it rewrote their DNA. It created a generation of financial survivalists who are playing a very different game than everyone else. This explains why they are the most anxious people in the room when it comes to the future, yet they are also the most disciplined when it comes to saving. They do not trust the stock market to save them, but they pour money into it anyway because they know they are their own only backup plan. It is a state of mind where you prepare for the absolute worst while hoping for the best, and it is incredibly draining. They are not pessimistic by nature. They are just people who have seen the insurance policy burn down along with the house. They remember the era of the gold watch, but they live in the era of the pink slip. This tension creates a very specific kind of behavior where every financial move is a form of defensive maneuvering. They are saving because they expect the next crash is already on the horizon. They are looking at their retirement accounts not as a path to leisure, but as a survival kit. And while the rest of the world sees a generation that is doing well on paper, they feel like they are one bad quarter away from losing it all. This deep-seated skepticism is the engine behind every decision they make, from the jobs they take to the way they spend their weekends. It is about building a fortress in a world where the walls are made of cardboard. When you look at their career choices, you start to see the same pattern of risk mitigation. They are the ones who pioneered the concept of having multiple streams of income long before it was a trendy buzzword on social media. But for them, it was never about the hustle culture or becoming a billionaire. It was about creating a redundant system. They saw what happened when a single employer held all the cards, and they swore they would never be in that position. So they keep the steady corporate gig for the health insurance, but they spend their evenings building a small business or managing a rental property. It is an insurance policy against their own resume. They are not trying to quit the rat race. They are just making sure they have a ladder ready in case the maze catches fire. This generation saw their parents' loyalty rewarded with layoffs, and they took that lesson to heart. They are the masters of the professional exit strategy. They will stay at a company for years if the conditions are right, but they always have their bags packed mentally. They know that the corporation does not love them back, so they treat the relationship as a purely transactional one. This is why they can seem so cynical to younger employees who are looking for meaning and purpose in their work. To this middle generation, work is a resource to be harvested to fund a private life that the economy cannot touch. They have zero interest in the "we are a family" corporate narrative because they know that families do not fire you to appease shareholders. This detachment is their greatest strength. It allows them to navigate a volatile job market with a level of cold-blooded pragmatism that is actually quite brilliant. They are not looking for a career that defines them. They are looking for a career that sustains them while they build their own personal safety net. Every paycheck is just another brick in the wall they are building around their family. And that wall has to be high, because they remember what it looks like when the flood comes. This leads to one of the most interesting contradictions in their spending habits. They are incredibly tight-fisted when it comes to the day-to-day stuff. They are the ones comparing prices on grocery apps and holding onto a laptop until the keys literally fall off. They have a deep-seated aversion to waste and a suspicious eye toward anything that feels like a status symbol. But then, they will turn around and spend $5,000 on a family trip to a national park or front row seats to a legendary rock band. To a millennial or a boomer, this looks like total inconsistency. But to them, it is perfectly logical. They have realized that in a world where markets can evaporate and currencies can fluctuate, the only thing that actually has a permanent value is a lived experience. You can lose your house in a foreclosure. You can lose your savings in a market collapse. But you cannot lose the memory of that summer you spent driving across the country or the feeling of being in the crowd when your favorite artist hit the stage. They are investing in un-repossession-able assets. It is a radical form of wealth management that prioritizes internal capital over external displays. They have seen the shiny toys of their youth turn into junk, so they have stopped valuing things that can be broken or stolen. Instead, they are building a library of moments that will stay with them regardless of what the Dow Jones does. It is a way of reclaiming some sense of control in an economy that feels increasingly chaotic. If the system is going to be unpredictable, they might as well get some joy out of it while they can. But even that joy is calculated. It is never about reckless spending. It is about a deliberate choice to fund the things that actually matter while stripping away the fluff. They are the ultimate skeptics of the consumerist dream. They don't want the biggest house on the block because they know that a big house is just a big liability. They want a life that is lean, mobile, and filled with high-quality experiences. This is the hallmark of a generation that has been refined by fire. They have learned to distinguish between what is real and what is just a marketing projection. And in doing so, they have created a blueprint for financial sanity that the rest of us might want to start paying attention to. This profound skepticism extends directly into how this generation handles the gatekeepers of wealth. If you look at the data, you will find that these individuals are notoriously difficult for the traditional financial services industry to pin down. While their parents were more than happy to hand over the keys to a professional advisor and trust that the experts had their best interests at heart, this middle generation is much more likely to take the steering wheel themselves. They are the ones staying up until 2 in the morning reading prospectuses, building intricate spreadsheets that track every single cent, and cross-referencing 3 different independent sources before they even think about moving their money. They do not want a salesperson in a suit telling them what to do with their hard-earned capital. They want raw data. This behavior is a direct response to watching the experts lead the previous generation right off a cliff. They remember the scandals of the late 90s and the utter failure of the ratings agencies during the housing bubble. To them, a fancy title and a mahogany desk are not signs of competence. They are red flags. They believe that nobody is going to care about their survival more than they do, so they have turned themselves into amateur economists. It is an exhausting way to live, constantly feeling like you have to be the smartest person in the room just to protect what you have, but they see it as the only rational choice. They are the last generation that truly remembers a world where you had to find information in a physical book, and they have carried that do-it-yourself ethos into the digital age. They are not technophobes, far from it. They are the ones who actually built the infrastructure of the modern web, but they use technology as a tool for verification rather than a source of truth. They will use an app to trade, but they will verify the trade against a manual log. This need for control is the defining feature of their financial life. They are terrified of making a mistake, but they are even more terrified of letting someone else make a mistake for them. It is a high-stakes game of self-reliance that leaves them feeling perpetually on edge. Yet, this intense focus on personal responsibility has made them incredibly resilient. They are the ones who can tell you exactly how much they need to survive for 6 months if everything goes to zero tomorrow. They don't just have a budget, they have a battle plan. And that plan is built on a foundation of deep institutional distrust. They have seen the too-big-to-fail institutions get bailed out while the average person got left behind, and they have decided that they are their own central bank. This is also why their relationship with debt is so fascinatingly specific. To an observer, it might look like they are drowning in liabilities because they often carry the largest mortgages of any demographic. But if you look closer, you see a very sharp distinction in the kind of debt they are willing to tolerate. They view a mortgage as a calculated move, a fixed-rate, long-term strategy to lock in a primary asset. It is a predictable line item that they can map out over 30 years. But when it comes to high-interest consumer debt, like credit cards or payday loans, they treat it like a contagious disease. They watched the predatory lending cycles of the 80s and 90s trap people in a loop of interest payments that never ended, and it terrified them. They saw how easily a few bad decisions at the mall could turn into a decade of financial slavery. So, they will leverage debt to buy a home or invest in a business because those are moves towards stability and growth, but they will refuse to carry a balance on a card for a new television. They want to know exactly where the exit is before they ever enter a room. For them, debt is a tool to be used with extreme caution, not a lifestyle. They are the generation that treats a credit limit as a warning, not a suggestion. This obsession with predictability is a shield against the chaos they witnessed in their formative years. They want to be able to look at a spreadsheet and see exactly when they will be clear of the system. This is why you see so many of them obsessively paying down their principal or looking for ways to accelerate their path to total ownership. They don't just want to be wealthy. They want to be untouchable. They want to reach a point where no bank, no boss, and no market crash can take away the roof over their head. This desire for total autonomy is the ultimate goal. It is not about luxury. It is about the peace of mind that comes from knowing you don't owe anyone anything. It is the dream of finally being able to exhale in a world that has kept them holding their breath for 40 years. And that need for security manifests in some ways that younger generations find almost comical. Take, for example, their insistence on keeping physical records. In a world where everything is in the cloud, this generation is still keeping file folders full of paper statements, tax returns, and property deeds. They are the ones with the fireproof safes in the basement. To a 25-year-old, this looks like an ancient ritual from a bygone era. But to someone who has seen digital records disappear during a corporate merger or watched a database crash erase weeks of work, paper is the ultimate backup. They trust the cloud to be convenient, but they trust paper to be real. It is a form of redundancy by design. They built the internet, so they know exactly how fragile it actually is. They know that a server in Virginia can go dark and take your entire financial history with it. So, they keep the analog version as a safeguard. It is the financial equivalent of a break glass in case of emergency box. This habit is a perfect metaphor for their entire existence. They are living in the future, but they are keeping one foot firmly planted in a reality they can actually touch and hold. They have learned the hard way that promises made in bits and bytes can be retracted in an instant, but a signed piece of paper is a physical anchor. This dual-track life, digital for speed, analog for security, is how they stay sane. It gives them a sense of permanence in a world that feels increasingly ephemeral. They are not being old-fashioned for the sake of nostalgia. They are being strategic. They are protecting themselves against the systemic failures they have already lived through multiple times. They are the people who remember the sound of a dial-up modem, but they also remember the silence of a bank's computer system going offline during a crisis. That silence is what they are guarding against. They are the ultimate pragmatists, moving through a high-tech world with the survival instincts of a mountain climber who checks his ropes 3 times before every move. Every paper statement is a tether, making sure they don't fall if the digital ledge gives way. It is a meticulous, detail-oriented way of existing that requires a massive amount of mental energy, but for them, the alternative, blind trust, is simply not an option. They have seen what happens to people who trust blindly, and they have decided that a little bit of paranoia is a small price to pay for security. This leads to a very specific type of consumer behavior that baffles modern marketers. They have almost no loyalty to large corporations, but they are incredibly loyal to specific products and individuals. They will cancel a subscription to a massive streaming service without a second thought if the price goes up or the quality goes down. But they will continue to buy the same brand of boots or use the same local mechanic for 30 years. Why? Because a corporation is a faceless entity that will sacrifice you for a stock bump, but a well-made product is a tool that does its job, and a local business owner is a human being you can look in the eye. They value things that are true. They have a built-in BS detector that is tuned to a very high frequency. They can smell a marketing pivot or a corporate rebrand from a mile away, and it usually makes them run in the opposite direction. They don't want to be part of a brand community. They just want a product that doesn't break. This is the generation that made grunge a thing, a movement that was essentially a giant middle finger to the polished, fake aesthetic of the 80s. They carried that preference for authenticity into their financial lives. They would rather deal with a grumpy local accountant who tells them the hard truth than a polished wealth manager who speaks in platitudes and jargon. They want the truth, even if it is ugly, because you can plan for an ugly truth. You can't plan for a beautiful lie. This demand for reality over perception is what makes them so resilient. They aren't looking for a vibe or a lifestyle. They are looking for a foundation. They are the ones who will skip the trendy new restaurant to eat at the diner they've gone to since high school, not because they are stuck in the past, but because the diner has never let them down. In a world of constant, jarring change, these small pockets of consistency are how they maintain their equilibrium. They are the anchors in a stormy sea of economic volatility, holding onto the things that have proven their worth over decades. It is a quiet, steady kind of loyalty that is earned through performance, not through clever advertising. If you want their money, you have to prove you deserve it, and even then, they will probably still check your math. They are the ultimate show-me generation. They don't care what you say you're going to do. They only care about what you've actually delivered. And in an economy built on speculation and future promises, that makes them the most grounded people on the planet. When you step back and look at the entire landscape of how this middle generation navigates the world of money, you start to realize that they aren't actually the contradictions they appear to be. They are a perfectly evolved response to an environment that has been consistently unstable. We like to label them as the cynical generation or the pessimistic one, but that is a fundamental misunderstanding of their core philosophy. They aren't hoping for things to fail. They are simply the only ones in the room who have a backup plan for when they inevitably do. They are the financial equivalent of a survivalist who also happens to have a very healthy 401k. They have learned that the only way to survive a system that keeps changing the rules is to become the most adaptable player on the field. They are the ones who can flip from a high-stakes digital environment to a completely analog backup system without missing a beat. They are the ones who have mastered the art of being invisible while building a fortress of personal security. This is the true legacy of the generation that everyone forgot. They didn't just inherit the world. They watched the world they were promised disappear and then built a new one from the wreckage. They are the living proof that you can be successful without being naive and that you can be secure without being comfortable. They have turned their skepticism into a superpower, using it to filter out the noise and focus on what actually lasts. They are the ones who understand that real wealth isn't about the number in your bank account. It's about the degree of autonomy you have over your own life. This is why they work so hard to stay out of debt, why they obsess over their savings, and why they value experiences over possessions. They are buying their freedom, one paycheck at a time. And while the rest of the world is busy chasing the latest trend or arguing about the newest economic theory, they are quietly making sure their fireproof safe is locked and their family is protected. There is a profound kind of wisdom in that approach. It is a way of living that acknowledges the fragility of our modern systems while still finding a way to thrive within them. They are the ultimate pragmatists, and their story is a masterclass in resilience. They remind us that the system doesn't have to be fair for you to win, as long as you are willing to play the long game and keep your eyes wide open. They are the ones who saw the crash coming, felt the impact, and then got back to work building something better. That kid who went to the bank with his dad in 1983 is still there, somewhere inside that 45 or 50-year-old professional. He still remembers the feeling of security that came with a simple, honest transaction. But he also remembers the day that security evaporated. He carries both of those memories with him every time he logs into his brokerage account or signs a contract. He is playing the game by the rules, but he is always looking for the exit. And honestly, in a world as unpredictable as ours, that might be the smartest way to live. We spent so much time worrying about the boomers' retirement and the millennials' debt that we completely missed the fact that the most interesting financial story in the world was happening right in front of us, in the lives of the people who just kept their heads down and figured it out. They aren't asking for a trophy or a think piece. They just want to make sure the mortgage is paid and the memories are safe. If you look at your own habits and realize you have a spreadsheet for everything, a box of paper records in the closet, and a deep distrust of anyone who promises you a sure thing, you might be more Gen X than you realized. Or maybe you've just learned the same hard lessons they did. At the end of the day, our money habits aren't just random choices. They're the scars and the shields we carry from the era that raised us. They are a map of the world we expect to face tomorrow. And if the world Gen X expects is a bit more chaotic and less trustworthy than the one we were promised, their response isn't just understandable, it's brilliant. They have figured out how to be the masters of their own tiny, private economies in a global system that is increasingly out of anyone's control. They are the ones who will be okay, no matter what happens next, because they already decided a long time ago that they were the only ones they could truly count on. That is not a sad realization. It's an empowering one. It's the ultimate form of financial maturity. So, the next time you see that neighbor with the ancient car and the incredible travel photos, don't wonder why they're so weird with money. Just realize they've cracked the code. They've found the balance between protecting the future and living in the present, and they've done it by trusting no one but themselves. If you found this dive into the psychology of the middle child generation helpful, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you see these traits in yourself, or maybe in your parents? Is the fireproof safe a real thing in your house? Drop a comment below, and let's talk about the habits that keep us grounded. And if you want to keep exploring the hidden forces that drive how we earn, spend, and save, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Understanding why we do what we do is the first step toward doing it better. Your financial life is a story, and you're the one holding the pen. Just make sure you've got a backup copy on paper, just in case.